It's both an extreme privilege as well as incredibly daunting to be here today. I look out and I see so many faces that I know and who watched me grow up, who watched my siblings and I, and took such an interest in our lives. So thank you for everybody for being here today and for coming to listen to my story. Somehow always speaking to, I've done a couple of these talks, and somehow always speaking to people you don't know is much easier than speaking to those you do. You have to be, when you're speaking to those you do know, you are so much more vulnerable, you have to be so much more real. So thank you for holding me and allowing me to show you my vulnerability. Grief is a really taboo subject. It's funny because it's the only thing that's certain in life is that we'll all die at some stage. And yet everybody is, almost everyone, is completely ill-equipped to deal with the realities of grief. It's not something we teach our children. It's something we generally feel incredibly incapable of being able to deal with. And so I'm hoping that through my experience, I'm going to be able to shed a little bit of light on grief and what's helped us in our journey. So why am I here? What equips me to be able to talk about grief? From what I remember, until the age of 8, I had a completely idyllic life. And then on one Wednesday evening, my mum died from complications post a car accident. You'll see her in images here, and there's some people in this room who knew her. She left, leaving, I was 8, my brother was 6, Matt, Sam was 3, and my dad. And I'm not going to speak about that today specifically. Suffice to say that I truly believe that it's the things that it's that experience which has enabled me to deal with the things which have happened in my life subsequent. My dad married Debbie at the age of, when Debbie was 23 years old, and she took on the mammoth task of parenting 3 children who were not biologically her own. When they were 18, they got divorced, and this was also a very difficult period in my life, and I went through certain grief around that as well. Debbie and I are here today, and I will remain eternally grateful for the role that you played in my formative years. So I was diagnosed with cancer for the first time when I was 23 years old. I had a malignant melanoma. And first time round was pretty simple. They did some surgery and I carried on with my life. And 6 years later, at the age of 29, it came back much more aggressively, this time in my lymph glands. I had to have a number of fairly complicated operations, had radiation, and then really my life continued fairly normally despite the beginning of my struggle with lymphedema. What they did tell me at the time was that I was potentially going to be infertile because of the area that they'd had to radiate. But at that stage, I was just so focused on beating this cancer, I didn't really think about much else. I then met my husband, James. There he is over there. And we were told that we would never be able to have children because medical tests showed that I was producing 0 eggs. And I was incredibly upset, but my darling James, in his forever positive way, said to me, Simone, don't think about it too much, you never know what might happen. And 3 months after being told that I was infertile, I fell pregnant. And on the 7th of October 2013, we had our precious little boy. And I really did believe that he was our miracle child and that we'd have no more children. 7 months afterwards, I found myself pregnant again. And that was our darling Bella. She was born on the 1st of February of 2015. And I really did believe that I was the luckiest mom in the world, and that everything in my life was as it should be. And then on the 15th of September of that year, of 2015, my life changed forever. At about 2 p.m. on that day, I was at work, and I received a phone call. And when I got home, I discovered that our precious darling Belzy had died. She had asphyxiated in her cot. And in that moment, our life was changed forever. It's impossible to find the words to describe that day or the days that followed. As we tried to get to grips with the fact that our daughter had died, that we would never see her again, and that life as we knew it, the future that we had, thank you, the future that we had imagined for ourselves was no longer our reality. Everybody's journey with grief is different, and James and I were certainly no different to that. Fortunately, we grieved completely differently. So my husband is a real crier. He sobs and cries, and I do not cry at all. And so for the first couple of months, James completely fell apart. And all I did, I was in complete shock, and I just held it together. And I just held on to anything that was normal, my work, my family, my friends. And I kind of coped through that period. And then as James was starting to get to grips with his grief, starting to cry a little bit less, it gave me the opportunity to be able to fall apart and to grieve. And we've been really lucky in that, in the way we've kind of moved together in our grief journey. Very soon after Bella died, James and I discussed trying to have another child. And we both decided that we wanted to have another child, but that James felt anyway that it was too soon and that we really needed to grieve before bringing another child into our family. I, on the other hand, told him that I would be able to control this grief thing, and that grief would not impact me and a child I would potentially carry. And pretty much miraculously, I found myself pregnant again. And I really did believe that this was a gift sent to us directly from Isabella, that she had sent this little boy to us. And for the first 6 months, our pregnancy went completely according to plan. And then at 24 weeks, I was standing at Murray's little school orientation at Web Pubs in Cape Town, and I started to bleed excessively. Went straight into hospital, and for 2 weeks I was in hospital with both myself and the little boy I was carrying being incredibly medically compromised. At 26 weeks and 3 days, I had a placental abruption, and our little boy Thomas was born, weighing in at a hefty 700 grams. He lived for 3 hours, and despite the amazing medical care he received, he had excessive internal bleeding and died as well. And that was really when I went into complete freefall. I was now not only grieving one child, but I was grieving two. And many of the months that followed were a complete blur to me. I really remember very, very little of the 6 months that followed. I've had many people tell me that if their child died, they just wouldn't cope. And I can tell you that's rubbish. Pretty much everybody copes, but your life is completely changed and your life is completely different. My life now is divided between BD and AD, before death and after death. And everything in my life is now within that time frame. Murray also kept us going. We had to get out of bed every day. We had to continue to function, to feed him, to read him stories, to play with him. On that afternoon that Bella died, I had to come back to the house. I had to bath him, I had to put him to bed that day and every day thereafter. And thank God for this, because we've been determined not to allow Murray's entire life to be impacted by the fact that his siblings died and the fact that he lost his parents in the same breath. And because Murray is the gift and the miracle that we have, and we're going to make the most of that. So that's a little bit about my story. You will see today you've got that on your tables. And it's for our blog, Isabella 1509. So about 2 weeks after Bella died, James came home and he said to me, guess what I've done? I've started a blog. And I looked at him and I said, you've done what? And I was shocked and appalled that he was going to put our most vulnerable selves out there for people to read, where we had zero control over what they were going to do with our story. And yet what I've come to realize is that it's been one of the most powerful tools, both in helping us grieve and in letting people know who are trying to help us where we're at without us having to continuously verbalize it. I also got a huge amount of help by reading other people's stories and by having, to be able to connect with other people through that. And that's another thing that this blog has enabled us to do. It's enabled us to connect with other people and to help them. And this has been a huge gift for us. And what it allows us to do is it allows our children's lives to live on beyond their time on this earth, and for their names to be continuously said and remembered. So both James and I have been incredibly privileged to have been supported over this time in so many different ways by family, friends, and community. And this is largely why I'm able to stand up here today and to share with you. People really did rally around us. I didn't cook a meal or go grocery shopping for 3 months after Bella and Thomas died. It was quite amazing. Loss is around us all of the time. Nobody's unaffected by loss, and everybody's response to loss is different. What I've learned, however, as I mentioned earlier, is that society is generally completely ill-equipped to be able to deal with this. Your mind will reel at some of the things that people have said to me, some real WTF stuff. It's quite bizarre, as it's the only thing that is certain in this world, and yet we're not given the tools we need to be able to deal with it. What I've found, though, while grief is completely different to everybody, there are certainly a number of commonalities, and I'd like to share some of these today in terms of commonalities in terms of the way you can help someone who's grieving. So the first of those is acknowledgement. When you see someone you know who has experienced a loss, even if you don't know them particularly well, acknowledge their loss. More often than not, it will be so much appreciated by that person. Remember, you aren't reminding them that their child or loved one died. It is with them every single moment. So by you acknowledging it, it's making that other person feel okay. It's making them feel that their feelings are validated and real, and that they can be real and authentic with you. I often get people say, but I just don't know what to say. I am sorry. Those 3 simple words perfectly suffice. You don't have to say something poetic or profound. I am sorry is all that you have to say. Society today is all about trying to fix things, especially men, but women as well. You want to fix everything. And our culture has unfortunately treated grief as a problem to be solved, an illness to be treated or healed, or both. In the process, we've done everything that we can to avoid, ignore, or transform grief. As a result, when you're faced with grief and people trying to help you, you're not faced with people, you're faced with platitudes. When a person is devastated by grief, the last thing they need is advice. Their world has been shattered, and this means the act of inviting you in is one of extreme risk. To try to fix or to rationalize their fear makes that fear so much worse. The most powerful thing you can do is acknowledge. Literally say, I acknowledge your pain, I am sitting here with you. Say our loved ones' names often. I know when I mention Bella or Thomas, people generally kind of get all awkward and just don't know what to say. It is such a privilege for me when somebody says their names to me. So never be scared to say somebody's name to the person who has lost them. Also, just everybody wants to help, and they just don't know how. Don't ask what you can do, actually just do it. The fact that we were fed, grocery shops done, that kind of stuff. I never actually had anybody ask me, the stuff just happened and it just arrived, and that was amazing. Because when you're in that place, you have no idea what you need. And so you actually just need people to step up and do it for you. And arrive unannounced. It doesn't need to be planned. You can just walk in. And that was amazing for us. People would just arrive at our houses and give us a hug. And that was incredible. Remember that our loss will change us forever, as this will tell you. Be patient with us and understand that. There's not a 2-week or 2-month grace grieving period and then you get on with life and you're back to normal. Loss that is not within the normal course of events, specifically that of losing a child, will change you forever. I will grieve for a lifetime. There is no moving on or getting over it. There is no fix. The loss of a child is not one finite event. It is the loss of every single moment and memory that you had imagined for them for the rest of your life. It's every missed opportunity with them. There are also particularly 2 days of any year that are going to be really difficult. Your loved one's birthday and the day that they died. And for me anyway, it's the build up to those days that's actually been worse than the day itself. Because you feel like you are drowning. You feel like there is something that's sitting on your chest. And so remember to be incredibly patient with someone over those periods, and remember them. Reach out and remember those days. Sorry, my presentation's going ahead of me. Social situations. This still remains very, very difficult for me. So I had huge social anxiety after both Bella and Thomas died, because I'd go into a social situation and I wouldn't know, did the people know? Didn't they know? Were they going to say something? Should I acknowledge? And this is incredibly, incredibly tough and something I still battle with. It helps you if you have your team of people around you to support you and to just kind of shield you from everybody else. But be sensitive to this when including somebody you know has experienced grief. Maybe give the other people a heads up if they didn't know. For me, it was being able to avoid having to answer questions like, how many children do you have? Last time you were pregnant, how old is your child now? You know, those sorts of really, really difficult things where you just actually have no idea how to deal with it. Also understand that many invitations will not be taken up, may be turned down at the last minute, or will leave early from them. And just remember to not take it personally. Also ensure that you're consistent in your support. When your loved one dies, everybody's there for the first couple of days and weeks. And then as everybody moves on with their lives, as they do and as they should, that support starts to wane. And that's the time when the grieving person is getting through the shock and really actually only starting to grieve for the first time. And that's when they really, really need you. And so once everybody's moved on and you're still stuck in that place, remember to reach out. When you offer to do something, do it. If you offer to go for coffee, don't chicken out at the last minute. Don't make the offer if you feel you won't be able to do it. Depression, the big D word that so many people don't want to talk about. Most people will experience some kind of depression or anxiety when it comes to dealing with their grief. For some people it's relatively short-lived, and for others it is an extended period of time, maybe forever. And it fundamentally changes your brain. I could not remember anything for 6 months after Bella and Thomas died. My memory recall went completely. What I can say is it's kind of come back, but you really, that cognitive change in your brain is real. And be patient with yourself if it's you, and just remember also if it's somebody that you're trying to help, that if they forget something, it's not, they actually just forgot because they're not taking in anything and not remembering it. Sometimes the only people you will find comfort in are those that have also lost children, this grief club. Because until you've held your child in your arms for the last time and had to say goodbye to them, you just don't get it. And so I've received a huge amount of comfort by connecting with people who have experienced the loss of a child particularly. Also, never tell a mother that her child is in a better place. We know you mean well, but no mother will ever believe that other than being there in their arms, there could be a better place. Also, never say everything happens for a reason, as this quote will tell you. Again, trying to fix things with platitudes instead of just being real. So I've spoken a lot about what others should do and what others can do. And I've done a huge amount of self-reflection in this just over 3-year journey that I've been on. And I've realized things about myself that I want to share. A lot of this is still a work in progress, because for some people I think, wow, it's already 3 years since Bella died. For me, it's only 3 years since Bella died. So some of the things I've learned. You don't grieve in a straight line. And that's really difficult for me. This control freak, want to tick it all off a list, really tough. It has its own timeline and its own rhythm. You generally go through the 5 stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and apparently acceptance. I know I'm not there yet. But it doesn't move in this linear fashion. You can get stuck on certain stages, and you sometimes go back to stages. You sometimes go back to anger, or you feel like you're back in that first day. Allow yourself to feel. Do the work, though it's so exhausting and so hard. But as long as you're not shutting down, you will receive, apparently, you will reach some kind of acceptance. You never go back to who you were before. People speak about bouncing back. You don't bounce back, because bouncing back implies to go back to where you were before. I will be forever changed because of this loss that I've experienced. And I've lost for the morning, I've grieved for the loss of my previous life as well, for what I had imagined life would be like. And I've really mourned for that as well. You are forever changed, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing. You have to accept it though, and not fight against it. And then once you've done that, you have to try and move from just surviving every day to trying to thrive as well. So the benefits of therapy. For some reason, there is this massive stigma around therapy and going to see a psychologist. There's the belief that you have to be suffering some debilitating illness or having some kind of interpersonal crisis before you can reach out and get this sort of help. what amazes me is that we all embrace ourselves and upskilling ourselves in other ways. You want to learn French, you go and do a French course. You want to learn about something, you read, you watch YouTube videos. And yet when it comes to, you've got a cough or a cold, you go to the doctor and you say, please won't you help me? And yet, battling emotionally is somehow different to this, and it shouldn't be. So a psychologist is someone objective, who can be honest with you, but without being scared of offending you. They help you to process things that you otherwise just would not be able to think about. You talk through issues, and you develop skills to deal with them in this lifelong journey that you're on. So I have been lucky enough to develop an amazing relationship with my psychologist, Gabby. When I first started seeing her, it was just after Thomas died. And all we did was focus on getting me through every day without feeling like I was going to implode. And then as I was starting to cope with my life a little bit better, we started to talk about the really more difficult things. What to do with the outfit that Bella died in. What to do with Bella and Thomas's ashes. What to do with her bedroom and her things. And these were things that I would never have been able to get to on my own, or certainly not in the period of time that I have been able to. And so that really was the best investment that I have made in myself. And I'm not embarrassed by the fact that I have been able to do that. Resilience. So what is resilience? It's something I've spent a huge amount thinking about. Resilience is the multifaceted ability to process, adapt to, and overcome adversity, challenge, and change. It enhances our potential to grow in significant ways and to build a life that is not just about surviving, but about thriving. What makes some people more resilient than others? Is it life experiences that shape resilience, or is it your approach to life that gives you your resilience? We all learn something about ourselves in difficult times. Through these times, certain people manage to maintain kind of a relatively even emotional balance, where instead of slipping into despair, they remain optimistic and focused enough to generally keep going with their lives. What interests me about resilience is it something that develops because of your experience, or is it something that's a predefined trait? Sheryl Sandberg, who lost her husband, talks a lot about it being like a muscle. We all have it, but you've got to exercise it for it to be able to develop and to grow. I recently did a weekend resilience retreat, and it's one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. I drove down the highway and I thought, I'm pretty good at this resilience thing, they're not going to teach me too much. And I can tell you what, I have never cried like that in 2 days. When we got there, one of the initial exercises with this was that we had to do answer 40 questions. And it gave you a score in terms of you were fairly resilient, not so resilient, needed to work on it. And I thought, I'll get 40 out of 40 for this one. And when I didn't, I started going back and looking at my answers, figuring out where I could change them so that I could show I was more resilient. So I'm not competitive at all. So I didn't get full marks on this. And what it did show me was that the place that I really needed to work, the thing I really needed to work on was my ability to be vulnerable, to reach out and to ask for help. So this is one of the biggest things that I've learned. And vulnerability looks different for everybody. For some, it's saying, I love you for the first time. For others, it's reaching out and giving and initiating intimate physical contact. For me, it's asking for help and admitting that I can't do it all on my own. Brené Brown puts it perfectly in this quote. Vulnerability is not weakness, which is what I thought it was. It's courage. It's allowing yourself to be honest and to be exposed. As a result of courage, we are willing to let go of who we thought we might be in order to be who we really are. Again, from Brené Brown, because she speaks a lot about vulnerability. And just listen carefully to this. The difficult thing is that vulnerability is the first thing I look for in you and the last thing I am prepared to show. In you, it's courage and daring. In me, it's weakness. For me personally, one of the best things that a friend can do is ask for my help. Ask me to please look after their kids, cook them a meal, do them a grocery shopping, fetch and carry, whatever it might be. And yet I'm so reticent to ask other people to do that for me. So that's something I'm working on a lot. It's also being aware that people don't just know what to do. Verbalize it. tell people what you need and how you need it done. Because people want to help, but they just really actually don't know how. So this is already, I've noticed, reaping huge rewards and benefits in my life, and this opening up of the vulnerability. I also realized on this resilient retreat that my circle of support had become smaller and smaller, and this was completely out of my own doing. I had pushed people away because this vulnerability became more and more difficult to share with every single thing we were having to overcome. And there are parts of my story that I'm not going to share with you today because they're actually just too much. But trust me, people were going, oh my God, it's those bloody Blankenbergs again. How is it possible? And what it did mean was that as we continued to face each challenge, other people felt that their problems didn't seem big enough to be able to share with us. And this is a common response, but just so untrue, because it becomes a vicious cycle. As we showed less vulnerability and shared less, people shared less with us. We then felt even more ostracized. We shared even less, and so the cycle continued. Vulnerability involves listening, validating, and sharing common experiences. When you're in the depths of grief, to have someone open themselves up to your pain and to their pain, and to do this in a complete non-judgmental way, it captures the essence of those feelings by sharing their own stories of grief and vulnerability. It's this ability to be able to share common experiences in the loneliest that I have ever been that ultimately aids your ability to heal. So having an attitude of gratitude. Often when you're thrown into grief, it feels like your entire life has gone to shit. Excuse my language. Everything feels terrible. And Sheryl Sandberg talks about this as the 3 Ps. Personalization, which is the lesson that not everything that happens because of you. Pervasiveness, which is the belief that an event affects every single area of your life. The importance with this is that you still have good parts of your life, and don't let one thing impact every single area of your life. And then permanence, it's the belief that sorrow will last forever. It doesn't, or at least the extent of the sorrow doesn't last forever. So I've tried to steer clear of these 3 Ps and try to remember and be grateful for my blessings, for Murray, for James and our marriage, for our home, my work and my colleagues, my friends, my family, my community. Because one of the things that it's proven to help resilience is by writing a gratitude journal. So every single night before I go to bed, I spend 5 minutes actually physically writing down the things that I am grateful for that day. And it just helps to rewire your brain to the positive and looking at things positively every day instead of the negative. Another biggie for me, because I'm not a control freak really at all, is the fact that I can't control everything. And that I need to learn that some things will be what they will be despite every single one of my efforts to the contrary. So when I was growing up, I was taught that if you worked hard enough, tried hard enough, that you could achieve anything you wanted to. And that's really inspirational and great thing to teach your child, but it's just sometimes not true. So James says that I'm the most stubborn and pig-headed person he's ever met. I prefer to think of it as being determined and focused, but what I have learned is that this doesn't always work. Through our challenges the last 3 years, and my single-minded determination to try and have another child, our walk with infertility, and the fact that I nearly died earlier this year because of how hard I pushed myself to try and have another child. I've learned that sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you try and how much you push. Some things just really are unattainable. The only thing certain is change. We need to learn to let go of the dreams of how we thought life would be and embrace what life really is and the gift that life is every single day. Because the only thing that you have control over is the choice you make on how you live your life. You have a choice to thrive rather than to survive, to make this a wonderful life and to live it to the full, for no other reason than to honor those who have not had that opportunity. I hate crying. It's my worst thing in the whole world. But I've learned that it's really important in this healing journey. So when you are a recovering alcoholic, you are never recovered, because they say you have to continue to work at your alcoholism every single day. I found the same with grief. You are never you can never be recovered. You are always recovering, because it's this constant bind every single day and constant focus every single day to try and get through this. Grief is really, really complicated, and I'm just going to go. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says, you will never get over the loss of a loved one. You will learn to live with it. You will heal and you will rebuild yourself around the loss you have suffered. You will be whole again, but you will never be the same. And on some days you will be feeling okay. Like you're starting to deal with this thing that you're going through a little bit. The happiness to devastation ratio isn't always 0 to 100. And then something happens. You see a photograph. Somebody says something insensitive to you. You have a memory or a significant date. And you feel like you are right back there on that first day. But what time does allow you to do is, instead of being dunked by that wave and it holding you down that you feel that you will never breathe again, you learn to dive under the wave instead of dunking you completely, and you stay under for shorter periods of time. You always get dunked, but you learn how to pop up a little bit quicker. So in conclusion, I'd like to leave you with a few things. To the person comforting a grieving friend, it's okay if you don't know what to say. You don't have to try and fix them. Although your words can't make their heartache any better, your presence and stillness can ease some of their pain and their loneliness. Just show up, listen a lot, and say very little. Understand that your loved one will be forever changed. Nurture them, love them, feed them, because they won't want to eat. Envelop them in kindness and patience. And remember that for them every day is a struggle. And the best thing you can do is to be there. To the person grieving, you don't think it's possible. You learn about yourself, about the people around you and their goodness, the potential of the future, and your undeniable strength. All beneficial as you move forward with this new life of yours, an altered life, but life nonetheless. Grief gives you a resilience you didn't know you had. I think more often than not, people are surprised by their own resilience, what they can withstand, and the fact that life actually can carry on, and that you can find joy again. This feeling can also often make you feel really guilty. I know, especially in the beginning, if I enjoyed a nice meal, sang along to a song in the car, that I was moving on. And one needs to keep on, and forgetting my loved one. And one needs to keep on reminding yourself that this is not the case at all. That being able to live again in an altered reality doesn't mean that you have forgotten the person or that you love them any less. It just means that you know that life is worth living, that the person who has left our earth wouldn't want you not to carry on, that they would want you to live your best life, if for no other reason than to honor them and the life that they didn't get to live. Thank you.